Hey there, it's Michelle, and I have Paul Ace joining me. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Super excited to be on the show today, Michelle, and hopefully we can give as much value as possible to your audience.
Yes. Now, we met a few years ago working with a mutual client and building out some things together. So I know how awesome you are. Can you please share a little bit more about yourself and what you do and who you serve?
Yeah, so we help seven-figure high ticket program creators go and rapidly scale. On average right now, a client working with us after 6 months or more does an average of $700,000 extra per month increased in revenue. So we help them grow with a lot of conversion rate optimization, understanding like every single part of the customer journey, and then seeing where the biggest moving the needle movers are, and then how to implement those.
Love it. Love it. All right. So today is all about conversational commerce, and we're going to find out exactly what that means, right? Because I know when I first saw C-Com, what does that mean? And then I was like, super curious. And really how important this is for your business, right?
Yeah.
So let's dive right into the question. So what is like C-Com and what does it do?
Yeah, so C-Com stands for conversational commerce. So you're like, oh, is that like e-com or something else? No. Well, like if you look back to the early 2000s, right? Back then, like e-com was suddenly this thing. Everyone started to go online and started selling things online. It's like, oh man, you want to be selling products online? It's like, oh no, not yet, not yet. I'm saying this and like just putting the line in the sand right now. If you're not getting involved in C-Com in 2022, then like by 2023, 2024, you're going to be behind the times. So conversational commerce is all about actually having that conversation with your customers, speaking in a conversational language, remembering people buy from people. And it's like what's happened over the last 30 years almost, right? So we went through this situation where if you look at like the 90s or whatever, everything was kind of done like over the phone or like in a face-to-face situation. And then suddenly online came online. Everyone was like, wow, this is great. And this automated ordering. And then people over time went, let's automate this, let's automate this, let's automate this. And suddenly you forgot that people are people and they just started being numbers on the screen. So what we've done is gone, let's take modern technology, let's take modern automations and things like that we can automate the grunt work, right? The thing that you'd say over and over again to start a conversation, but then let's continue the conversation to find out, number one, exactly what do those people want? And then how do you give it to them, right? It's very simple, is when you actually speak to your customers, you actually find out what they want and then you can give it to them rather than trying to guess what everyone wants.
Yes. Preach. Okay. So it's funny that you said the thing about the automation, because I remember being in a group coaching program and somebody was like, I never want to talk to anybody. I just want to press the button and everything just go. Right.
Yeah.
It was almost like, I don't think it was a lazy thing. I think it was almost a fear thing that people didn't want. They thought, oh, this was the way that I don't have to sell, or this is the way where I don't have to like kind of put myself out there. It's like I'm putting myself out there, but not. So I'm loving this because you're right. People do want to do business with people. And I just feel like in our current environment, things are changing so much that people do want to have that conversation, you know?
Yeah. And this is why. So we say, approach it with a 80% human-like customer experience, and then a 20% human experience. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example. Imagine you're doing an abandoned cart process, right? So typical abandoned cart messages you get through. What's the first message say? Something like, hey, you left stuff in your cart. Here's all the reasons you should go back and buy it. Remember, there's a discount. It only lasts till tomorrow. Right? What are people doing in that first instance? They're basically saying, hey, you're only here for me to sell to you.
Right.
And that's it. So what we do that's different is we'll just go, hey, I saw you didn't finish the order. I just wondered, did something go wrong or did something break? Can you just let me know and I'll get it fixed? Now, I've used that same message, that same process across email, across SMS, across Messenger. And when we've used it on certain platforms, especially we've used this in the past on Messenger, just have a guess what the response rate is to that message.
I'm assuming it has to be 80%. I want to
So
say.
it's like now you've made the stats rubbish.
Okay.
So
I was gonna say more because you don't. It's coming more from not like that creepy big brother watching that you knew I was on the page versus like more concern. Like I want you
yeah.
to, like coming from that place of service. Like I want you to be able to get this. How can
So
I?
it's 40% on Messenger. We
Oh,
have
wow.
reply rate, right?
Okay.
So just think about that right now. Like if you're in e-commerce or if you're selling coaching or whatever the thing is, right? I used to be in the e-com space a few years back, and the abandoned cart rate is it's like 90% of people never come back, right? So 90% of those people typically never come back. So just think about this for a second. You're getting a 40% response rate on that first message. So what does that mean? Well, even if you find out what half of those people, what was the reason they didn't buy,
Right.
then all you need to do is just go, okay, great. Let me answer that question for you right now. Is there anything else that's stopping you from buying today? No? Great. Well, listen, I really appreciate your time. Let me give you this special discount code just to say thank you for sharing that with me, because it means we can help other people more. It's like, oh, yeah, great. Now, then what we do is just put a little bit of scarcity in, but we put ethical scarcity. So you can take like a deadline funnel on there, right? And then on that, you'll go, really sorry, I can't, there's only 24 hours on the discount code. Unfortunately, I'm not in control of that, right? But if you want to go, can you just go ahead and check that link works right now? And make sure that discount gets applied. Can you check your code works? Instead of going, hey, go and claim it, you've got 24 hours. Hey, can you just check that code works for me? And they're like, yeah, and this works in actually on the phone. It works on SMS. It works in every platform. So there's a magic term there that I use in everything to get, you can use it to get testimonials, to get people to check out, whatever the thing is. Can you just check that thing works, right? So for example, let's say you're on a strategy call and you're on that strategy call and maybe that person isn't a good fit to work with you. But most people just go, that person was a good fit, great, end the call. What I do is go, okay, that person's not a good fit to work with us. However, what we'll do is, how can I give you as much value right now? Say, here's my goal for this call. We're going to find out like if we're a good fit for you and you're a good fit for us, fantastic, that's amazing. If not, then that's okay. We'll just refer you to someone who can help you more. Now, that being said, I want to make sure that you have takeaways that you can come away from this call where you're like, wow, this is the most valuable call you've ever been on. So then at the end of the call, I'll make sure I go, this takeaway, this takeaway, this takeaway. And I go, so do you feel that's been valuable today? And they go, yeah. It's like, great. Would you be again, like ask for the no, not for the yes? Would you be against leaving us a review if you've had a good experience? Like, no, I wouldn't be against that. Okay, great. So then what I do, I'm on the Zoom and I just drop the link in the chat. Great. Can you just click that link? Just check that works. And they click the link and they go, yeah, that works. Great. What page can you see? Oh, I can see the testimonial thing there. Great. Yeah. So if you want to write a little few words in there, you can finish it off after the call. But if you want to write that in there and then just hit submit, that'd be amazing. I really appreciate it because it means we can help more people like we just helped you. And they're like, yeah, sure, that's fine. Right. Because I've already got the page open.
Right. Yeah,
just conversation. That's all it is.
I love this. Okay. Can we rewind back just a little bit before I move on to my next question? Is that, so when you're starting out this conversation, are you saying the conversation starts when, or it could be like anything, lead magnet?
So the conversation typically starts automated, right? And this is where you have the human like and the human experience. So some examples of where you can put that conversation: abandoned cart sequences, pre-framing before someone gets on a strategy call. So as soon as someone books a call, hey, can you just really looking forward to seeing you on the meeting. Can you just reply yes to confirm that you've got this and you're going to be on the call? Yes, I am. Great. Oh, and then they reply and they're just curious. What made you book the call? And then once you get on the call, then you can repeat that thing back to them, right? So you're already creating that pre-frame, that rapport. Then number one, your show rate gets higher because someone's created that extra commitment. And then number two, then you've already found out and built some rapport there. So when you get on the call, it's not like, this is really random and weird. So for example, like even with my so we run a podcast, and then I had a guy that we have an automated process that goes out beforehand. My email, I send an SMS reminder. It doesn't say, friendly reminder, your appointment is coming up in blah, blah, blah. It just sends a message to say, hey, Michelle, I'll see you in an hour. Here's a link. Catch up soon.
Mm-hmm.
And then they reply because they're like, oh, it's Paul, right? So he replied, I had one reply today and he says, oh, looking forward to it. Now, I then got a notification to see that he'd replied. So I just reached back out, oh, really excited to geek out with you on some of this stuff today. It's going to be awesome. It was like, oh, yes, so totally. So as soon as I got on that call then on the podcast, he'd already got rapport with me at that point, even though I'd never met him before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about the pre-frame.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Okay. So when you're talking about finding like this profitable path of business, like, can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. So something that we see when we go into, so we only work with businesses that are already doing 7 figures plus a year, right? So when they're at that stage, it's typically like they've got the offer dialed in to an extent, right? And they've got a clear process that they take people on. However, what most businesses don't have when we first see them is they don't actually have their customer journey mapped out. So how do you know what the holes are in something if you can't see it?
Right.
Okay. So we'll go, okay, let's map out every funnel step, every SMS, every email. And then we'll go, right, are we taking them on the most logical path in order for them to become a high ticket customer and the most high value customer? Mm-hmm. So then what happens next is then we look at that and then we start adding in tracking at every stage of the buyer journey. And then over the course of the next days, weeks, months, then we look at all the tags, right? So we look at all the tracking that we've put in place. And then we go, what is the sales velocity? And for anyone who doesn't know what sales velocity is, it essentially means what is the lifetime value of that customer? So how much is that customer worth over a 30, a 60, a 90-day period, 180 day, even after 12 months or overall lifetime? So what we look at is, okay, well, if they hit this piece of content, how much are they worth? If they hit this landing page. So like, is it better to lead people in with a lead magnet, or is it better to lead people in straight with a VSL? Is it better to lead people in with a blog piece that need to see first and they opt in for that? And then we look at the lifetime value over time from each one of those things. And then what we know is we go, okay, let's compare the lifetime customer value with the cost to get that action, right? So for example, let's say we created a quiz on the front end of the marketing. And then let's say that was, we look at it and we go, the lifetime value, day one, that person's worth $2, right? Day 30, that person's worth $120. Now, if we go, it costs $10 to get an opt-in. Have we made money on day one? No, we've lost money.
No, right.
But then what we see is over the course of a 30-day period, wow, this is actually on a 12x return. But what most businesses do, that's certainly in startup phase, they go, it's not working. I've spent $10 an opt-in, and I've spent $1,000, not got any money back. So you have to find those profitable paths. That's the only way to do it, right?
I love that you just said that because you're right. Most entrepreneurs are looking at that. They are looking at like what is right now, not looking at the long-term thing or not letting it run long enough to then have enough the data to measure and track and figure out if what they're doing is right. Oh my gosh, I love that you hit on that. So is that what you're really looking at when you're looking at optimizing the funnel? So like, how do you understand the language of the customer in the market? So can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. So obviously we're looking at, okay, what's the most profitable path first? So once we identify what that is, and then we'll look, for example, when people do conversion rate optimization, a lot of the time they will go, okay, well, this opt-in page beat this opt-in page, right? So this one converted at 25% and this one converted at 30. Well, that one at 30% is a winner. Not necessarily, right? So if you look at it, you have to look at it as a whole funnel perspective. So I'll give you an example, right? Let's say I put a headline on an opt-in page, simple opt-in page, just headline, email, button, nothing else.
Right.
And I put this headline on it. I'm going to show you how to get $1 million tomorrow. Right. And let's say you actually believed it. I'm going to show you how to get $1 million tomorrow. I'm going to tell you exactly where it is in the desert. Be there at 5 a.m. It's going to be right there. Right. Now, if I'm selling cat food,
right,
it's not a congruent offer, right? On the next page. So it's like, oh, wait a minute. This is not what I signed up for. Now you might have a really high opt-in rate. You might get a 50% opt-in rate because everyone's like, oh my God, I want to get $1 million in the desert tomorrow. But then when they get to the next page, it's not congruent. So then what you have to look at is not what is the opt-in rate, but what is a lifetime value of someone who goes through that opt-in page. And that's really what's key, because then you might have something that's converting at 15% opt-in rate, but actually back-end sales, it's significantly more. And a perfect example, we've got a client at the moment that they were like, hey, the cost per call is almost double on this specific opt-in page. However, it's the most profitable ROAS campaign right now, even though it's costing them like what, $400 or $500 a call compared to $200 a call. But the people who get on there are ready to buy because we're pre-qualified and we've done the legwork.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Love it. Okay. So I know you touched base a little bit on some of the copy, like in the abandoned cart and emails and stuff like that. So how do you know what kind of copy to write, or what, or like you've got like to get very unique in your copywriting so you can stand out to have this conversational commerce? So what's your method for that?
Yeah. So firstly, what you want to do is re-engineer the process, right? So reverse the process and work backwards. So what I mean by that is the first thing, if you've got a big list, great, right? Typically, like I say, our clients have already got a good size list. But if you haven't, then go and find someone who you can partner with who has, okay? Or find where you can go and get that data from. But most importantly, you need to be able to go and get the data to find out the language patterns of the customer. Don't try and stick your finger in the air and guess which way the wind's blowing. Because if you do that, then like you're just going to guess and guess and guess and guess. So what we do first is go, okay, let's look at what is the language patterns that the customer's using. So I'll give you an example. Let's say your broadband went down right now, right? Michelle, you're probably going to ring up the broadband provider and you're just like, oh, I am so frustrated by this right now. They go, I know you're angry, Mrs. Fernandez, right? And you're like, no, I'm not angry. I'm just frustrated. Why are you not listening to me? Right? Because you're not using the language pattern that you have given to them. So all marketing is really, when it comes to the actual marketing, the psychology piece, is just use the language that people are already giving you. When you simplify it down, instead of trying to go, oh, I think this is how to skyrocket and catapult your income. People are not saying that on the day. Do you know what I really want to do this year? What? I really want to catapult my income.
So true.
No one would say that, right? They say things like, do you know what? I want to make more income so I can spend more time with my family this year. So this year, we've always dreamed of going on this vacation. Oh, and this is like, almost think of it like the one-on-one selling. But then when we look at the copy piece of it, right, there's two sides. So if you go in a mile deep into one niche and you know that everyone in that niche wants that specific thing, go hyper specific in the way that you write the copy. So if I give you an example, right? Let's say I was selling to people that have size 7 feet, right? That love cowboy boots and love the color red. Now, if I'm going to describe in an email, I'm going to describe these cowboy boots in as much detail as possible. They're like, if you're a size 7 and you've always looked in your life for those cowboy boots that just have got that magical fit, like you feel like Dorothy from the Wizard of Oz, but in cowboy boot form, right? Then you write a specific and create that image in the person's brain. Now, if you're going wider, What you don't want to do is go too specific about the thing, because then that person goes, that's not me.
Right.
Right. Because you're only looking for the words. Every time someone reads any piece of copy, you want them to say, that's me. That's it. That's what you want them to say. So like in the other respect, if you did it the other way around, right, and you're actually going wider, you might say, I'm not sure what that is for you, right? It might be that dream vacation that you've always wanted to go on. It might be a sun-kissed beach. Maybe you're more of a ski person kind of holiday person, right? It might just be the fact that you've waited years and years to take your kids to Disneyland and you've not been able to do it. Right. So what we do is then create a bit of a broader scope. Now, I'm not sure what it is for you, but you're probably thinking about that in your mind right now. And then it gets them to decide what it is instead.
I love that. I love that. The deep and the broad. Okay. So when we're looking at that and when we're going to split test, what do you recommend on split testing?
Yeah. So one of the key things around split testing is look at the big needle movers, right? So like changing a button color and stuff like that, it ain't going to make a massive difference. Changing the button color or let's move, let's change it from saying your email to your email here. No, right? The little things that are just not going to do a lot. However, if you go more down the direction of, okay, well, what's the hook? Let's go and test different hooks on the front, right? Same offer, but different hooks. So like, is it, hey, what if we could make the guarantee more irresistible? So like, for example, instead of going, oh, this is a 14-day guarantee, you might go, hey, we're going to give a 10x guarantee. So if you don't feel like you've got at least 10x of value after day one of going through this, just email us and we'll refund your money. Or it might be a unconditional 365-day guarantee. Okay. So you've got loads of, you want to look at the big needle movers. And then when we're looking at headlines, they're also 70 cents of the dollar is spent in the headline. So how do you go and test that in the most effective way? Well, what if you could go and test 20 of them for about $30? That'd be worth doing, right? So I can't claim for coming up with this idea, but this is something I learned from Mint CRO. And these guys are awesome at these things called traffic headline tests. So what they do is essentially you'll come up with like 20 different headlines. So take all that survey results, take all the pains and the desires and everything that people have said, and don't just do 20 of how to this without this, right? Get a bit more creative, get a bit more thinking about what you can do. And then you run an image ad, right? And you have just a clear background. So you might like have a red background or a blue background, typically like something that stands out from Facebook. So don't put a blue one because obviously it blends in. Make something that stands out, then put just a headline on there. And then what you do is you run a traffic objective instead of running a purchase objective or anything like that. Because what does that do? Well, it optimizes to look at people who will click on that ad. Right. So what happens is then you do the traffic headline test and then you go, right, if it hits these parameters, say, for example, if it's hit 1,000 impressions, it gets switched off because we're only testing the message. If it's less than a 1% click through after it's spent $1, it gets switched off. If the CPM is too high, it gets switched off. Right. If the unique click through rate is too high, it gets switched off. So you end up spending about $3 to $5 per headline. But some of those only spend $1 because they're just like, if they get no clicks after $1, it's off. Right. So then what you do is you go, let's do 20 of those, see which one works best. Okay, that works pretty well. Let's test a little bit of budget now with that on a normal ad with a purchase objective. Okay, that increased ROAS. Now let's go and test that on the overall landing page and then test that new headline. Love it. Then it's just a scientific approach. Testing doesn't have to be expensive. Right.
That's a good point. And a lot of people think that it does have to be to get what's going in. Oh my gosh. So good. So good. Is there any last minute, anything that you want to add? You gave us a lot. I will say.
So here's the key things is remembering which stage of growth that you're at. Okay. So if you're just starting out, you might listen to some of the things that I've just given there, and you're just like, oh my God, that feels like too much. So I'll just lay out very briefly how to implement conversational commerce on a basic level, depending which level of scale you're at. Okay. So number one, if you're just starting out, every single person that goes to your checkout that gives them the phone number, call them. Every single one. I just advised someone to do this that was in our copy coaching program. And she was like, yeah, I had this person that was like buying 25 products per month. She was like, I didn't know why. I was like, okay, great. What happened? She said, well, I called him, and it turns out she was selling like parting gifts, right, for funeral homes. So she said, I called him, and yeah, he's actually got a funeral home. So and then it turned out that every time he gave one of these parting gifts out, that customer came back and spent like 10, 15 grand on the funeral. So he was buying them like hotcakes. And she was like, I'd never even thought about the funeral market. I was trying to sell them one-to-one.
Right.
So what happened? And now she's gone, okay, let me take that as a case study. And then she's ringing all the other funeral homes in the area going, hey, this is the greatest lead magnet you could ever have. How many do you want?
Right.
So then I give her some strategies around that and said, hey, why don't you say, hey, I will give you an exclusivity of like a 5 kilometer radius if you, and it'll be this much per unit. I said, you can charge double what you were charging online, because they're like, okay, so you're saying it cost me $50 to send out one of these lead magnets, and on average, 80% of those people have come back and spent 15 grand with me. Yep, that's correct. I'm going to do that all day long. So that's the first stage if you're starting out, ring every abandoned cart. Number 2 is if you're at like 6-figure stage, automate it. So you got text messages going out, what went wrong straight away, and then start having conversations with these people back and forth. And then the magic of that, if they're a good fit for you, awesome, right? If they're not, make sure you've got a directory of people that you can work with, that you can refer them to and get and monetize every single no. And you can literally double your business overnight, right? Because how many people say no? Well, if you look at it, let's say you've got a 5% conversion rate, 95% of people saying no. What if you got another 5% of those people to say yes to someone else's offer?
Right.
You just doubled your business, right? And then the 7-figure phase, that's when it starts to become like, have the right team in place to be able to implement those things, but also know that you have to go through peaks and troughs and valleys of doubt when you're at scale at 7 figures plus. And what happens there is when you're rapidly scaling, the profitability suddenly goes like that before it goes right up. So because if you let's say you go from spending $20,000 a month to $100,000 a month, and if you're selling a high ticket offer, you might have 30 days before that money starts to come back in. Right. So you're 80 grand out of pocket in that period of time, right? So the thing at the 7-figure level when you're rapidly scaling is, and the biggest thing is knowing, okay, how do I create all these touch points throughout the buyer journey to reduce the amount of time it takes to get that money back? And then number 2 is like being able to hold on to your hat, right? When you're going through that scaling period, and just trust the process and come out the other side.
Oh my gosh. That was genius. I love that. What text message software do you recommend?
So right now, a lot we use Go High Level, and the reason we use that is because it's got 2-way SMS, and that really was a key part for everything that we do, right? If you're not having 2-way SMS conversations, and I'll tell you how powerful that is. We had a client that was doing a live challenge. So we turned the live challenge evergreen. Our LTV, so lifetime customer value, was around $280. Now we implemented this process and added a concierge into the every day of the challenge. So they actually checked in with them every day of the challenge. Right. The lifetime customer value went up to over 420.
Wow. I'm glad I asked that question, because I know a lot of the SMS services, they don't have that response. So I was even thinking like, so what do we do with this? I know Community is one that a lot of people use. However, you have to opt in to Community. So there's no way to integrate it with your funnel or with whatever you're doing. So even though you don't pay for that, you don't pay for the back and forth with the messaging, which seems appealing, it kind of goes back to your point of what you're saying, like, sometimes you do have to pay a little bit more because you're going to get way more in return. So if you're able to actually communicate, right, then you'll get a
And
response.
here's the reason that I don't use community more is tracking.
Mm-hmm. That's
There's
the other
just,
thing.
so I can't say, okay, these are like track all these tags back to the CRM system and actually look at every single customer journey that people have gone on and what they've clicked off the back of those things and all that kind of stuff. As far as more, I haven't digged into it in detail, but look, what we found is even to get our customer list out of it was very hard.
Yes.
Now, I think communities are awesome for the right fit, and the fact that they build the business model that way, it must reduce profitability just because you've got Twilio costs coming off the back of it.
Right,
but
right.
Overall, that's why I found high level to just be a better fit for what we need.
I love this. I wrote it down. All right. Where can people find you, Paul?
So if you want to go and find out more about us, we've also got blogs, podcasts, and all that kind of stuff. So you can go to Amplify C-Com, no hyphens or anything in that. Amplify C-Com with the letter C .com. Go to that site. And there's also some free resources and guides on there. And then if you want to check out the podcast where we interview 7-figure plus entrepreneurs, then you can go to amplify7figures.com.
I love it. All right. Thank you so much, Paul, for coming on the show today and sharing all your greatness with us. This was so good.
Awesome. I appreciate the time, Michelle, and hopefully we'll give as much value as possible to your audience.
Yes. Awesome.